That's loud.
Sorry?
That's very loud.
Okay, I'll turn it down. That's fine. One, two. That's it. I think that's covered around it.
Okay, we'll just hold the mic for that loud.
Okay, right. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming out on a very cold night tonight. I will, in a moment, I will hand over to the panel. Just to say, with the microphones, we are live streaming the meeting to YouTube, which goes on the PFCC YouTube channel. We'll be there for anybody to look at in the future. And I would ask if you would speak into the microphone when asking questions, so that the camera can pick up anything that's been said. And the other thing about this microphone, when you do speak into it, it picks it up here. It doesn't pick it up down there. So it'd be great if everybody could hear what's being said. So without any further ado, I will hand you over to Roger Hurst, Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for Essex, and we'll get the meeting on the way.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Have I got the hang of this? Obviously, it's necessarily thousands who are watching live on the YouTube channel. There may be a few people, but it's always good to have it recorded afterwards. So I do appreciate your taking part and using the mic. I'm Roger Hurst, I'm the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, here to see if we can pick up on your local issues, answer questions you may have, see if we can solve some of them for you. If there are bigger problems, maybe it can take a bit more time. We will deal with everything that you raise. If we have to put answers onto the website afterwards because we don't have the answers now, then that's what we'll do. Normally I'd kick off with a little bit of a preamble about the bigger picture of what's happening in the county, but first of all, it's, I think, a good idea to allow the panel to introduce themselves. So I'll hand over.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carla Claydon. I am the Community Partnership Manager at Uttlesford District Council.
Good evening, I'm Steve Winship. I'm the Group Manager for Uttlesford, Braintree and Harlow districts and Fire Service.
Good evening, my name's Stuart Weaver. I'm Chief Superintendent of Essex Police and I'm in charge of the North area of Essex.
Good evening, my name is Martin Richards. I'm a Chief Inspector and I'm your District Commander.
Thanks very much. I'll keep my comments brief, really. I mean, I think we know where we are. We have spent a few years investing in Essex Police, expanding it by over 900. We are really wanting to keep it at the level it is at the moment, because right now we are managing to reduce crime across the county. We're about 10% down now from the peak of where we were. With some crimes, burglary we've halved. Really good success with burglary here in Uttlesford over the last year, with about another 20% reduction. We've managed to reduce antisocial behaviour by about 3/4. We've managed to halve homicide, in fact more than halve homicide. But with some crimes we have a lot more to do, particularly around rape and serious sexual assault. We also have more to do around drug crime. We know there that we've managed to reduce the level of harm from drug crime. We've reduced knife-driven drug crime by about 40% from its peak, but there's more we need to do, and I'm sure you'll back us up on that one. And there's a lot more we need to do around domestic abuse as well, where we are seeing some success. The police have been very innovative, and that's helped a lot, but we know there's a lot more we need to do there. There's also more we need to do about rural crime. We have introduced a rural crime team in the last few years, and we've increased its size. That's had some impact. We've managed to reduce things like unlawful incursions, unlawful encampments. We've reduced hair coursing, but they're still too high. There's more we need to do around that. At the moment, we are experiencing a bit of a surge in fly tipping across the county. So that's something I think where we need to have a focus as well. Not solely the responsibility of policing, not solely the responsibility of the local council, not solely the responsibility of them together. It also includes the environment agency. But there's something I think we can do there to try and make that better. So we are focused on that as well. And from the fire and rescue side, been a big investment in recent years in fire protection, particularly on the back of what's happened the awful incident with the Grenfell Tower, where there was 2 people died. Some strong recommendations came out of that about how to keep our buildings safer. That's really what we've been investing in strongly in Essex Fire and Rescue for the last few years. Doing more around building protection, doing more around fire prevention. That appears to be working, so the number of dwelling fires is down by over 20%, which is healthy. We are seeing more field fires, which has to do with the climate, and there's certainly going to be more investment we need to make there around new technologies such as lithium-ion batteries and how they work in vehicles and in two-wheel vehicles, and make sure that those are safe and work around how to actually deal with those fires in a better way. So that there is a need for more investment there. As you know, government situation is that the public finances are very, very stretched. We had an announcement of the provisional finance funding settlements for both the services just before Christmas. That's been a tough one. We are having to cancel in the fire and rescue service some investments in future improvement, which is uncomfortable. That's mainly capital investment in trying to make things better for the longer term future. We're pretty confident we can maintain service levels at least for next year, but we do need to campaign with the government to make sure we get proper funding, as I said, for those new technologies. And on the policing side, unfortunately, the stretch is even greater. They have not fully funded the pay award that they made last July. That means that we are facing the situation where we are likely to see Essex Police shrink by a couple of % over the course of the coming year. I'm still in very close negotiation. I've had conversations with the Home Office yesterday and today, right early in the morning, trying to make the situation clear to them. I don't think it's in line with the government's desire. Certainly talking to Yvette Cooper, her desire is to see police expand, not shrink. So if we can get the message through to the Home Secretary that we need to do something slightly differently, then maybe we can make that whole and make it work. But right now it looks a bit difficult. That means, of course, that in terms of setting the local council tax precept, given those very tight budgets, to maintain the level of service that I think you need to have and that we want to deliver to you, indeed, we'd love to improve it further. I am going to have to increase the precept by the maximum levels that the government allows without a referendum, which is basically for a Band D property on the fire and rescue service about £5, and for a Band D property on the police service around £14 a year. So about £19 a year overall. That doesn't sound very much, but it is a reasonably high percentage. I'll have to take that to the Police Fire and Crime Panel in a few weeks' time and see if I can get that through. But my interest, I think, and probably I hope is yours, but I'd be really interested in your feedback. It is that I think we need to maintain the service and make sure that we continue to do what we're doing to make you safer. That's probably it from me. So, Glenn, you're going to do the MD bit, walking around and not too far to walk. It's not that big a room. Getting questions together. So, please, who's first?
Yes, question over there. Sorry, this. Oh, there we go. That's it.
Better with the battery.
No, there we go. That's it. Gentleman in the back.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming. We did have a discussion last year, as you are well aware, and I will say I have no problems with the police force on the ground. The guys that I've dealt with over the last year have been fine. I won't dispute what you've just said, but I am a bit worried about the strength of the police force. You had a consultation earlier in the year, late last year, on reducing the police force. There was an article, I believe it was in the Dunmow broadcast, taking 200, was a given number in my head at the moment, officers away for a £34 million deficit or something to that effect. I didn't quite get what you said about reducing the force at the moment. I know you said we'll be okay for next year. To me personally, financially, £19 to keep the police force at the level it's at, but the job the guys do is not a problem. However, there are plenty of people, I think, that will have problems with that. Sorry, just to make it clear, Clara will know, I am speaking as a member of the public, but I am a district and parish councillor as well. But this is nothing to do with my official role. You mentioned drugs, that was our little brief last year, if you like. In where I sort of spend most of my time, dealing did go down, but that was because of a state of burglaries where you had police forces or police officers on the ground a lot. It frightened the people away, right? If you reduce the number of officers, they're just going to come back. And I was just speaking to one of your officers earlier on. They're already coming back. So hopefully you can raise the funds you need. And we will go no further than that, really. I just feel that maybe you're going to get a surprise in 6 months' time when you look at your figures with what's happening on the ground concerning drugs. Thank you. And I will make my apologies now. I do have to go in a role as a district councillor to a parish council, so I need to. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening under such time pressure. I do understand how important parish councils are. They're very much representative of the core of our communities. Yeah, so I'll just say thank you for the comments and take them on board.
Thank you.
Good night.
Great. Are there any further questions on the committee? Certainly.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Hurst. Nice to see you. Before I start, I see Inspector Jackson, Sergeant Mayo and their colleagues are here. Can I just put on record what a fantastic job they do? Outstanding. And that needs to be publicly recognised. And they do it when they're under huge resource pressure. So it's very nice to see two operational commanders here, because there are some very important operational issues. Like Jeff Driscoll, who just spoke, I'm also a district councillor. I'm not terribly sure that in Uttlesford we're getting value for money from the precept. The precept is roughly twice the precept for Uttlesford District Council. And we seem to have problems with resource allocation. So you'll recall, because it was very widely publicised, the non-crime hate incident in Saffron Walden featuring a journalist recently, which is still, I think, the subject of an investigation by a chief constable from another force. I'm just intrigued by the resource decisions that allowed 2 officers on a Sunday to do that, when, as Councillor Driscoll has said, we still have drug dealing taking place across the district in public venues, and that Chief Inspector Richard said last year that there wouldn't be a response to, when we have a sexual offences clear-up rate of 3.5%, and we have profound issues with domestic abuse. Please explain, Chief Superintendent, because I know that Mr. Hurst regards these as operational issues, how you make your decisions as to how you prioritise resources and how that affects and benefits the community. Thank you.
Thank you. It's probably a question for both of us, Councillor Gregory. I think it is important to make the point at the start. We have a police and crime plan, and there is a national strategic policing requirement, and those set the priorities for Essex Police. And you will look at those and you will find that non-crime hate incidents do not feature in either of them. The total resource commitment from Essex Police to non-crime hate incidents is about a cop in the full course of the year, 1 person, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 1.5, but it is not a lot. The main thrust is absolutely on the things that you are talking about. We have as clear priorities local visible neighbourhood policing, dealing with drug crime and knife crime that results from it, dealing with rape and serious sexual assault, protecting vulnerable people, dealing with road safety. Those are the things which we are focused on. And yeah, the media will have their sport with them. They do enjoy making a big fuss about things. But that was not part of what really keeps Essex Police busy. But you asked a specific question of the superintendent, so I will hand over to him, the chief superintendent. Sorry, Stuart.
No problem. Thanks, Roger. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it. So Roger's already started giving you the strategic view. You'll be aware that Mr. Harrington, the Chief Constable, then sets out his policing plan. There are various different commands within Essex Police, and we all have to mirror what the Chief says, and they are the strategic objectives that we have. So what does that look like from a day-to-day basis? Because that's essentially your question. So there's various ways that the public can contact the police, generally speaking, for urgent emergencies to come in on the 9 system. And then that goes into the contact centre, and a decision is made using a Thrive process that looks at risk assessment of the incident that's ongoing, and then a decision is made by the contact centre to send resources or not to send resources. Okay, so that's the decision making process there. Outside of the emergency response, Martin's team, and they're sitting at the back, and I know you've had good contact with them, and I'm grateful for your putting on record your congratulations on your efforts to them. So they'll be concentrating on more local priorities, but once again, it all goes back to the Chief Constable's plan. So Martin is responsible for the district, so Martin speaks to Phil at the back and speaks to Kev, and then they will decide where in the chief's plan the resources go. And we're intelligence-led around that. So, for example, when the public are ringing us up and it's not necessarily an emergency, those incidents go onto a system called Storm, and then they're put onto intelligence reports, and that's fed through a tasking process to allow Martin to decide in the teams where they need to prioritise the policing. So that's the simplistic answer. Hopefully that's answered your question, but feel free to come back.
May I come back?
Oh, of course you can.
I'll stand up and
Yeah, I can hear you, it's fine.
Maybe you can repeat the question as
Yes.
well, just for the benefit of the council.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Superintendent. Could I perhaps suggest, because there is an ongoing concern, especially amongst members of our district council, of whom there are quite a few here this evening, that we're really not getting the quality and standard of policing that we deserve. And that's not the fault of the wonderful team at the back. They do, as I've said, a fantastic job. Can I suggest you go back and speak to the Chief Constable and say that he might wish to, in his plan, reconsider the allocation of resources to local policing and perhaps direct a few more our way, especially bearing in mind the amount of precepts that we pay as a district to policing. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I can obviously have a conversation. I can't have a direct conversation with the chief. The chief, has a system and a process that he works to. But I can certainly take your points on board and go back and have that conversation with my boss. But it'd be useful to understand exactly the problems and the difficulties that you think you're suffering through Uttlesford, to allow me to then understand what it is you need. So perhaps we can have 5 minutes after the meeting today to have that conversation, to enable me to have the further conversations you've requested.
Thank you.
And if I may, I'd like to join in that, because I do have direct conversations with Chief Constable. A few years ago now, I think before you were district councillor, actually, Councillor Gregory, we had exactly that. I came up with the then Chief Constable and sat down with the leader of the district council and discussed exactly those issues. And it did make a difference to the level, of resources committed here to Uttlesford, Saffron Walden, Dunmow, Thaxted, the area as a whole. I think at that point we did see a reversal of what was at that point a rising crime. Given that crime is falling at the moment, I would contend that we are in a much better position now than we were then. But I'd really like to have the conversation, and I think there's actually more we can do in partnership. We have got things like the Safer Streets Fund. We have got antisocial behaviour hotspot funds, where at the moment Uttlesford District Council is not bidding into those funds with the PFCC's office with me in the same way that most other councils across the county are. And I think I'd like to understand that and help resolve it, so we actually get the resources deployed here in this district that can make a difference for you.
Thank you.
Well, we have resolved our battery issue there, so that's fine. Any further questions there from anybody? Oh, there we go.
Good evening, Mr. Hurst. Nice to see you here again. Councillor Gregory preempted a question which I was going to ask. Thank you very much for giving us the description of the process by which the decision was made to deploy 2 police officers on a Sunday morning. You did not tell us the reasoning behind it. And some of us find that rather difficult to understand.
I don't really want to go into in a great deal of depth, because as Councillor Gregory said, as I have announced, it is subject to a review by the Chief Constable of Gwent, who is the national lead on hate crime, who will be looking at what the process was, and that will be published at that time. But I can assure you that it was on the basis of a complaint from a member of the public. We don't go trawling the internet looking for these things, and it was investigated as a hate crime, not a non-crime hate incident. So a report of crime which was duly investigated without a great deal of intensive resource.
It was a remark, I believe, which was eradicated fairly soon after it was made. But thank you very much for the information. My own question was with regard to your own office, Mr. Hurst. According to your website, as of last January, you had, I think, 33 people in the office. if I remember correctly, and I think it's probably during your first tenure as Commissioner, you had 17. Maybe there have been economies made in the interim, but it does seem a considerable increase in personnel. Is it commensurate with the additional work which has been put upon your shoulders? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, good question. I think you're probably, I can't remember if 17 was ever the number, certainly it was around 20, and currently it is 34. So the change is as you described. A big chunk of that change is because of the, and Susanna probably remember better than I do, when the new regulations around complaints review came in, that we had quite a shift of resource from Essex Police into the PFCC's office. We are now responsible for the review of complaints against the police. The Police Standards Department handles complaints in the first instance, but if the complainant is not satisfied with that response, they can come to my office. That used to be reviewed again within the police service. That has been externalised to PFCC's office to give a bit more arm's length. And a big chunk of that increase has actually been to cope with those complaint reviews that we now have to do by statute. It was a transfer from policing to us.
February 2020 was when that came in.
Suzanne did remember when I couldn't remember. February 2020. That was
Thank you very much.
the main part of it. Some other parts of it have been an expansion.
Mhm.
I have made sure that we have, in any one year, expanded our budget by less than the police budget overall was expanded.
Thank
But
you.
what we have done is beef up a little bit our restorative justice team,
Mhm.
and we have increased our scrutiny capability as well. And Suzanne's going to tell me what else we've done.
The violence and vulnerability unit were in that time as well.
That's also
will
true. So
account
that
for
is
more than complaints.
It will indeed. So it's a very good point. So the violence and vulnerability unit is something we set up. We got central government funding for that. That is the entity which is the third prong in the spear that we use against drug and knife crime. So Essex Police on the ground, stop and search on the streets, National Crime Agency internationally dealing with drug gangs, and the violence and vulnerability unit, which is there to divert young people from getting involved in drugs and gangs in the first place, working with schools, working with youth groups. That's a new thing that we set up since that initial time, and of course that had a direct stream of government funding, so it does not count in terms of what I was saying in terms of the overall increase in my own office budget. It's separate funding.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman here.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Richard Abbott. I too am a councillor. Several here tonight. And I'm a district councillor. I was wondering, the ridiculously poor performance of the CPS, which seems to get in the way of deliverance, what you might call good policing, or at least crime resolution. Is there any function for the PFCC in terms of pressuring the CPS to do its job properly? That's question number one. The second one I'd just like to ask in passing is, we're days away in Uttlesford for a decision as to whether Hull will exist in the future and whether in fact Essex County Council will exist. So we get rolled into a combined authority, at which time I understand the PFCC will cease to exist. It may well roll into a mayoral situation. I'd just like a little bit of clarity on that, if possible. Just help me on my thinking.
You tempt me into territory where I'd love to wax lyrical for a long time. Maybe we can take that offline over the half of Shandy or something at a different juncture. But basically, yes, you're right. The white paper that's out says that the government wants to have mayors across the country, which is to devolve powers to directly elected mayors. And it wishes for those directly elected mayors to take over the role of the Police and Crime Commission or Police Fire Crime Commission in that area, and there would then be a deputy mayor for police or police and fire appointed by the then mayor. My directly elected role will be morphed into part of the mayoralty. If you look at London, in terms of the Mayor of London's precept, 3/4, nearly 80% of the Mayor of London's precept is spent on policing and fire and rescue. So it's a big chunk of what a mayor does. The other big chunk is transport. Transport for London in London, but around here would be the buses, and they're talking also of rail franchising going to the mayoralty. So the two main things are transport linked to economic development and community safety. Obviously, yeah, I'm a big fan of devolution. I think this role has made as a directly elected representative of the people, I wouldn't do this if I didn't believe in it, would I? I've got to be an advocate of it, and I really am. I think it's made a difference in terms of the way that Essex Police has been funded, in terms of their capability, and indeed the way that the Fire and Rescue Service has been funded and governed, which I think I'd like to think has made it not just a difference to the public, but also a difference to the way it works for members of the organisation. So I think it's a good thing, but I very much recognise that councillors who want to have their opinion and have that properly voiced and have a proper discussion over it. But perhaps the bigger question really was the CPS and what do we do there? So I don't have governance of the CPS in the way that I do over policing and the Fire and Rescue Service. There is a thing called the Criminal Justice Board, which is an entity where all of the criminal justice partners can be represented. So that's policing, it's probation, it's the Crown Prosecution Service, it's the Crown Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunals Service, it's witness support, it's the prison can come, but they tend not to. Don't know why, but they don't particularly want to attend. We get good support from HMCTS, the Courts and Tribunal Service. We get good support from the CPS. We discuss the problems. What I can't do is lobby for funding and raise taxes to support them in the way I can with police and crime. So whilst I have written to the Lord Chancellor, I have written to the Senior Presiding Judge, asking for more support for the Ministry of Justice funded entities in our criminal justice system. I don't have a direct bearing over it in quite the same way. It is absolutely a crisis. It must be. I won't invite the Chief Superintendent to comment because it's probably a bit too political for operational policing, but it must be a daily frustration for these people. It really must.
Any further questions there? Yes, gentleman here. Very good.
Roger, just following up on your point about your results of the police complaints. How long has this been in place for?
February 2020.
February 2020 for the review of complaints, not for complaints themselves.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask a question or mention our problems as farmers with rural crime in this area. We feel as farmers that it's like living in the Wild West at the moment around here. We have people driving all over our crops nightly. We have people coursing hares and deer. We have people poaching in woods where there's wildlife and game. A couple of weeks ago, a friend and colleague confronted some poachers and was beaten up and had his jaw broken. Last night, I found some poachers in my wood and I was wise enough not to go and confront them, but I phoned the police and they were very helpful and they came out within half an hour. The only thing I would say is sending out 2 young female police officers to a potentially very dangerous situation isn't really very sensible. And I'd like to know what you can do to help us as people living in the countryside, working in the countryside, to protect us and our family security.
So, I mean, thank you for raising it. I did hear about the guy who was basically set upon by 5 people and hospitalised by a really awful crime, clearly aggravated assault. And I'm sure that the police colleagues are very aware of it, very aware of it as ever. As I said, that's an area we know we have more to do. We have got the rural engagement team in place. They, I think, have improved the situation from where it was. But just a couple of weeks ago, just before Christmas, I held a rural crime summit with representatives of the agriculture community and other community groups across rural Essex. because I think we need a relaunch. I think we need to work out what we need to do to move into the next steps. And clearly, there's a lot we need to do there about better communication. We have Farm Watch in place in some areas. Farm Watch needs to be well plugged in to local policing and making sure that there are clear channels of communication that are open so people can be helped. We need to make sure that the people in the control room understand exactly what rural crimes are and what risks they bring with them, and there are particular risks, both violence and isolation. I think there is more that we can do. We have a number of ideas that came out of that. Perhaps we can, we certainly need to make sure that we work through that programme. It's being fed back now through the Chief Officer team as to what will actually be part of the plan going forward, and we'll come back to you with where we're going to go in terms of the next steps. I don't know if you want to comment on the current situation.
We'll come back slightly. Don't underestimate the strength of our female colleagues. They're more than capable of dealing with such incidents. So, I'd just like to bring that one back. But I'm obviously aware of the situation you referred to, where a friend of yours was assaulted. That investigation is ongoing, obviously, so I can't comment any further on that. But Mr. Hurst has mentioned the strong work that the rural engagement team do with the farming communities. And once again, I'll happily talk to you afterwards and see if there's anything you'd like to do or any conversations we can have. But again, good to hear that when you called in last night, you got the response that you were after and you needed.
Thanks.
I can do just discuss. So thanks very much. So in theory, from my Uttlesford side, we're kind of split in two really, where I've got some large demographics, be it Dunmow or be it Saffron Walden, and then I've got a very large demographic, which is essentially my farmsteads and my farmers. So for me, there is quite a lot of work being done if I split it. So I know you talked about three things, essentially the poaching element, the coursing element, and then what you didn't talk about, but I'm sure you're going to know very well, is the theft element. So for us, we've been running in conjunction with UDC, so Carla, is something called Operation Muddy, whereby we've used some of CSP funding, so the Community Safety Partnership funding, to go out to our farmers and try and encourage to basically mark equipment to try and assist us. So I don't know. I know we run the statistics about 2 weeks ago, and I think we were running around about 58 farms and different areas we'd been to, and I'm sure I'm being thumbs up. About 58 farms we'd gone to in about 3 months to go and do work with. So we specifically have an operation in place whereby we're going around seeing the farmers and we're doing work with them as this is funded by Carla, and I can pass it to Carla if she can want to talk some bits more about. But also the hair coursing. So hair coursing is one of the big things for us. So knowing the problems, and you've already highlighted the driving over crops and stuff like that. For us, hair coursing, if we get it, it nearly has a response whereby we put the helicopter up, and then we have quite a lot of resources that's put into it. So not only do we put the helicopter up, our rural engagement team and our local teams will go and find. We have such a success rate at the moment whereby every year there's a World Cup held for hair coursing. And I jest you not, that used to be held on my patch. It's no longer held on my patch because Essex Police are so fast at it, taking away so many cars and prosecuting people, that we're basically pushing that issue outside of our patches. I couldn't necessarily tell you the statistics, but I know that we have taken many dogs, many cars, and we've sent many people to court for this. So for us as a district, there's a lot of work that's going under hair coursing, knowing that the cost of putting a helicopter up, this is how seriously we take it and how much it's affecting the rural community. So for me, I'd also encourage, and I want to put a shout out to the gent standing behind you, who's Paul Harris in charge of the watch systems. So we're always encouraging farmers to sign up to watch, not just farm watch, there's horse watch. And essentially, it's then encouraging you to talk to us and tell us the concerns. We try to every year have a specific farm conversation where we bring the farmers in to talk to the community policing team, and that's usually held earlier in the season. I know that we're going to be looking to try and put one up. I'm getting nods again, so we're looking to try and put one up again for this season to try and bring the farmers in to tell us their concerns. So for us, there's quite a bit that we're trying to do, but essentially we are relying on farmers to work with us to tell us the issues. If you're getting people coming in poaching, if you're having the hare coursing, if you're having people come and take the farm machinery, if we're having issues with the horses where we're having the hay bales taken or the tack taken, we need to be told so we can put stuff in place. So we're very alive to the fact that there's a lot of, or there has been criminality within the farming community. And this year, as in 2024, we did a lot of work to try and mitigate that. Oh, I've got.
Thanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ask Carla if she'd like to make a comment and then come to some others who obviously want to come on that particular issue.
No, I was going to say, I think Mike, you said that very well actually, but we are looking and would like to engage our farming community more as a council, so I'll be keen to talk to you afterwards, if that's okay. Thank you.
And then I think so. One of the cops at the back, I don't know.
Yeah, so, sorry, it's just to say that we have got enough marking kits every single farm in Uttlesford. So if you know people that haven't reached out, contact Kerry. We will come out. We've got the signs. We've got the marking kits. We will mark property with you, and hopefully that will.
How does that actually work? Though? I mean,
Sorry.
does that actually make a difference? Because if someone's getting nicked, they're going to nick something.
You're right, to a certain degree. The signs obviously are a deterrent. So advertising the fact that your property has been marked is a visual deterrent to any thief. But what it does allow us to do is we will recover plant all year round. And if property
Can we just get this on the mic, please?
If property has been marked, it does allow us to repatriate property to owners. 100%. It may never stop it being stolen completely. But it does allow us to identify where it's been stolen. The property marking kit that we use has got unique DNA marking within it, and so if we can literally tie back certain items to certain properties, and therefore if we arrest a suspect and they've got property on them from that location, we can essentially tie the two together.
And can you tie in farming, rural watch with heritage, including Faith Watch? Because to me it goes hand in hand.
Certainly at the moment we've got the funding to do farms. It doesn't mean that we can't work with Paul and CSP to look at heritage and other things further down the line. But at the moment we've got funding to do farms and plants, and there are specific kits designed for that, which is what we've purchased. And that's about us then working with farms.
So maybe suggest if you want to take that to the community safety partnership and make it a suggestion, that would be a good idea. So the guy in red, I think, wants to get on this.
Well, sorry, the lady there. I'll come round to everybody. Everybody will get their chance to have their say.
I think it's on this particular question. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. There we go. If you could speak into the microphone, it's just for the cameras.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Gill. I'm a parish councillor. I'm also Uttlesford Association of Local Councils and on the Essex Association of Local Councils. Not many parish councils here. I was just going to say, could UDC put out that for hare coursing, it's a 999 call? Because I think the public don't always know that. We put that in our newsletter. It really needs to be put out there because I think people think it's, we'll get hold, we'll just phone the parish council chair and tell her it's happening. Or him, whatever. No, people need to know it's a 999 call. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for that comment.
Thank you. Again, this is one coming from a farmer and an advisor that speaks to many farmers throughout the Essex area. Two parts to the question, really. You want to understand how we can communicate with you better. What is the best way farmers can communicate their concerns to you? That's one part of the question. And the second part really is regarding drug dealing. I'm seeing a huge amount of drug dealing going on, probably out of the towns now, into more rural locations, which is a huge concern. What are you doing to control that? Again, is it an awareness thing? And secondly, or thirdly, why do I feel so at risk living in the countryside? Because regularly, as a colleague has said, a farmer has said, there are nightly incursions onto farms, stealing equipment, and we feel extremely vulnerable. When we do make dialing a 999 call, there's not always somebody available, and it may take. The last one I did, they had to come from Saffron Walden That's 20-minute drive. There's no chance of catching any criminal. They're gone. And the hair causes exactly the same. You know, you don't stand a chance unless you're in the vicinity to catch them. All the vehicles. Sorry, it's this way. That's it.
I think that's going there.
Okay. All the vehicles have got false number plates. We then confront them because of the physical risk and violence. And literally, if you do, they will drive at you and your life is at risk. So I appreciate all that Essex Police is doing. I know you're doing a huge amount. It hugely concerns me to hear that you're going to stay at the level of officers that you're currently at, because I think you're overwhelmed with too much bureaucracy and paperwork, which as soon as there's a crime committed, you know, that level of paperwork, bureaucracy, which seems to just tie officers up for too long. Those are my concerns. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you for voicing those concerns, and it sort of echoes the comment we had earlier from the gentleman I didn't catch your name about it being a wild west as far as what we're concerned. It does sound as though there is something happening here right now which we do need to listen to and work out how to deal with. Briefly on your comment about excessive paperwork, I mean, one of the things that is in my area is trying to make sure that we get the right technology in. There's an awful lot of that paperwork that can be automated. I come from a background in the private sector. There's stuff that police officers do by typing it themselves, which would just be auto-populated in any financial institution. And that is one of the things that we are investing in right now, and trying to make it awful better. Automatic redaction, production of documents for a police officer then to review and make sure it's right. But sitting down and writing it themselves, you can save hours and hours and hours doing that. But that wasn't the most important part of your question. It's just the bit I've got the answer to about the mic. But I think if I may, I'll hand over to the cops who know about the how to police the morality better.
Thanks, Roger. Forgive me, I think there were three questions, weren't there? Best communicate was the first one, if I've understood that right. So I was historically the strategic lead for public engagement in Essex, and I've recently handed that over in the last week. So what I can tell you is there's a tactical delivery group that sits underneath that, and part of the strategic delivery is around how we best do that. So I'm happy to have a conversation with you afterwards and try and understand how we can best achieve that with the farmers, because there is a superintendent that delivers and leads on the whole engagement strategy. So we can have that conversation afterwards. And forgive me, I know the third one is around feeling safety. Just remind me what the second question was, if you don't mind.
Drug dealing, rural drug dealers coming out of the towns into the rural communities.
Yeah, okay. So have you been phoning that in when you're seeing it? That's the first thing, because we can only respond to what we're told about. So forgive that question back to you, but if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And then, so that's where it goes back to the start of the conversation around how we respond to things. So the control centre make a decision around whether that requires an immediate response, and it either does or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then that comes back into Martin's world and the team's world to start building a community intelligence and start looking at how we can interact and start disrupting those activities. So again, what I can give you an assurance of is our intelligence teams, because I asked for 6 months worth of data today before I came here to be suitably briefed, as you'd expect me to. You know, we understand what intelligence we've got on those phone calls that are coming. That starts to allow us to build a picture, and that allows us to take enforcement action. So without having an individual conversation and playing this out now, that's the process that works. So provided people keep reporting it, then we can start doing something about it and building intelligence up. And then in relation to how do you feel safe, again, all you can do is keep reporting things. Mr. Hurst has already given me the articulation around trying to get into government to get more money, to get more cops on the street. So there's a part of the political persuasion that's required there. But for the rest of it, we can police where the intelligence tells us to police. Uttlesford, sadly, is not sadly, I don't mean that wrongly. It's a vast area geographically. So we can't police, sadly, I'm being open and honest with you, can't police every farm, we can't be everywhere in the hope that we're in the right place all at the right time. But what we can do is use the analytics that are available to us to best work out where crimes are happening and what the patterns look like. And that's the stuff that I was explaining is done through the bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks there's a tasking meeting. Martin will be required to present what's going on in his districts at the meeting, and then decisions are made around where we police. So that's how that comes to fruition, if that makes sense. I can't guarantee you a feeling of safety, but I can help you understand how we police.
Okay. Maybe just one additional thought. I mean, Stephanie Gill was really kind enough to voice the prominence of parish councils. please use your parish council. We have a direct line to them from the PFCC office. It can be really helpful in terms of picking up on local issues, having them channeled back, and the parish councils and town councils are a really good way of our communicating out and letting you know what's going on. So I would ask you to be involved with the parish and town council network. That can be another way of understanding where the issues are and how to deal with them.
We have a question from the gentleman at the front here.
Just a question in relation to making a phone call, 999. Confidentiality, is that disclosable to the people that you're ringing about if there's a court case? So, sorry to throw
No,
that at you,
it's
a big thing about retribution.
Yeah.
That
So
you're going
you-
to end up with problems if you're disclosed as being the person that raised the issue.
And we would never want to put anyone at risk, obviously. So you can phone in and you can say, I'd like to give this information anonymously, even if it's on a nines call, if that makes sense. Alternatively, when we come to then build the evidence, if you've witnessed something from an evidential perspective, if we can get a written statement off of someone, that then makes it a stronger evidential case, because we've then got a witness that's willing to, provide a statement, potentially attend court. But of course, we understand the challenges that may come with that through fear of retribution. But there are lots of, without going into massive detail now, there are lots of things that can be put in place to protect witnesses and to protect victims and make it as safe as possible for you to be able to come forward and feel safe in giving the evidence or giving, witness statement.
I simply raise it as a support for people making a phone call, because that's a big issue that's been brought up with me.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, I'm just sorry, I'll hand over to you, Martin. I just say Crime Stoppers, absolutely anonymous and confidential. 0800 555 111. If you're worried about confidentiality through the police system, and of course you are right that the courts like to know who's providing evidence. But if you want to be completely anonymous, use Crime Stoppers. The information comes straight through to the police. They get the information now to deal with it, but you have that buffer. The police don't know who you are. Martin, what do you think?
I feel that Mr. Hurst actually answered some of it for us. So the answer is, I think if you're saying you were making a 999 call and you're saying somebody assaulted you, then the answer is the person we're going to arrest is going to know who's making that allegation. But I don't think that's what you're asking. You essentially, I guess, you're asking about passing information around drug dealing or something like that.
Real crime.
Yeah. So
people that are perpetrating it aren't exactly nice people.
So the answer is there are two methods in. So there is, as Mr. Hurst says, there is the Crime Stoppers, which is exactly anonymous. And we know there's a lot of underreporting. We want to report. And for us, at my level, every 2 weeks we have a tasking, and whereby if we start getting hotspots, so let's say it was something that you would think actually as a singular issue I wouldn't be responding to. However, if I had 20 or 30 reports of something that was quite low level, it would start to build a pattern and give me something that I could then go out and deal with. So for me, I don't know. If you said you had a plant pot coming off the front of your driveway, you would say, well, actually, I don't want to report that. I don't see. But actually, we could say, well, do report it, because every single house is losing a flower pot or a sculpture or something, and actually starts to make a footprint. That then gets picked up every 2 weeks, and then it will come in front of me, and we'll start to then put operations in. So for me, if we're just talking about just passing detail, please do so. So even if you kind of think it's low level, it could be affecting a larger community. It will then start to hotspot, and every 2 weeks we hold meetings and we can start putting resourcing in. So for me, yes, there is anonymous reporting. There are plenty of other ways to come through, and it is that please the community leaders to try and get, if we're talking about drugs, to get the drug stuff discussed. I think there's this thing whereby something could be said and say, well, I see something there, and because not necessarily there's a police officer standing there in 10 minutes time, they'll say the police are not concerned. Okay, well, that's just not the case. If I told you there's been 1,476 stop searches carried out in my district in a 12-month period, and 991 were for drugs, and it's a 30% positive rate for drugs, it shows that we do take it seriously. What we need to do is we need to build up a case. So we do ask the community, if they see something they're concerned about, please report it. If that's being reported, even if you went through just the normal channels, as in the 101 channel or the online channel, you could leave your name and address. We wouldn't be disclosing that. What we would do is essentially we wouldn't be disclosing it. Essentially, we would want to build up. So if we talked about drug dealing, we would want to build up a case. So essentially, at some point, all the detail comes in, and it's an inspector rank. So Mr. Jackson stands at the back. He would see that, and he would have to have enough detail to basically say to a court, a magistrate's court, you see all this detail, I now want to bust in that door and go in and do a warrant. We've done 6 warrants in 12 months in Uttlesford district, but it requires us to build up a case. We couldn't just go to a magistrate with very minor detail, because they would just say, I'm sorry, there's not enough to essentially breach the human rights of busting in that door. So for us, we need to build up that case. So we not only do I plead out to the community, but I plead out to the community leaders to assist us with this. Please tell us, either Crime Stoppers or through the systems. And by building up a case of saying, it's this vehicle, it's this registration. I've never asked the community to put themselves at risk to get stuff, but please keep telling us. By keep telling us, essentially at some point, it gets picked up by my intelligence team, and then it comes out to Mr. Jackson's team. Mr. Jackson then writes up a warrant that goes to the magistrate, and then he puts together a complete crew that then go and deal with that. For us, we've done 6 warrants in this district this year, and essentially recovered £250,000 worth of stolen goods. I won't go to how much money, but the reality is, if we can build up that picture, we will act on it. But we do ask for the community to assist us with that.
Thanks, Martin. Anyone else want to come in on that one? Good.
If I may, I will just underline the Crime Stoppers point there. I regularly liaise with Stuart Rawlins, who's the county coordinator of Crime Stoppers, and we meet often to discuss how we can best support each other as part of organisations.
I have some cards at the back here if you want.
I saw you wearing those.
Very
good. Very good.
Okay. Okay, I'll just go over there to the next question. Okay. Well.
I'm another district councillor from Uttlesford, and I would like to echo the comments that the rural community have made, in that they do feel vulnerable. When I started as a councillor about 5 years ago, we came to you and said we've got this problem of off-roaders going up green lanes and then departing into the fields and having a playground, really. And by your advice, ringing 999 when we saw it happening, then we got to the bottom of it. And I must say that that has made a difference. Yeah, the public must be aware that they can ring 999 if they see something happening. And I'd encourage the public to get more involved with their parish councils, and maybe officers could find out when there's a parish council on in the local area and just go and sit at the back and have half a pint of shandy at the end of it or something, you know. We had our annual visit of an officer to our village hall car park recently, and I thought, well, I'll go and see if anybody turns up, and they didn't. So I engaged with the guy and we had a chat, and then we had a walk. And by walking 200 or 300 yards at the end of their visit, we met several people en route, and the information that was passed between public and the officer was very helpful. And yeah, encourage more of that. I would say on a different subject that when the fire service was amalgamated with you, I was sceptical of that. How long have you been merged now?
I think it's a bit rich to say that they merged, but I have had joint governance since the 1st of October 2017.
Okay, and as far as I'm concerned, it's been seamless. I don't know what it's been like from your side, but compliments to the firemen who in the community are a tower of strength. Please feed that back to them. We see more of them than we do of the police officers, and it's mainly because they come out to village fetes And during that time, they are talking about all sorts of things like defibrillators and fire protection and handing out information. It really is a good public relations team. Not that they're supposed to be doing that. I don't know whether they are, but it's great. Thank you very much.
And thank you for that. And just as a side note to that, and it saved £18 million. So, do you want to maybe comment on that? Give you an opportunity to speak.
I thought I got away with it again. Never mind. So, yeah, thank you again for those kind comments. The 8 stations, the 8 fire engines, and the 6 crews you've got in Uttlesford are dedicated on-call firefighters. We're looking to recruit more, but they are doing that. It's not just firefighting; it's fire and rescue, and they're all trauma trained. We have specialist crews as well that do other things I can't discuss here, but they're highly trained individuals that are highly motivated, and they do it on top of a day job. So, yeah, all credit. So, thank you for your praises. It's welcome, and I shall pass it on.
And we are always looking for new recruits for on-call.
Sorry, trouble you again. Thank you to the Chief Inspector for those statistics. One thing troubles me about them though. I was chatting to Jeff Driscoll, who was the gentleman who spoke first and then left, and we were saying the same things, that the same places that last year we were reporting there were frequent and the same drug dealers, they're still there this year. My parish councils all tell me, oh yes, up by the radio mast overlooking the M11, that's where all the drug dealers are. And we keep reporting these things, and I'm dreadfully sorry. This intelligence-led policing seems to take an awfully long time to percolate down into any action or anybody being arrested or dealt with. So you'll forgive me if I'm slightly sceptical as to its effectiveness.
Okay, so there is definitely a case for asking you to continue to report, because it is the way that we get the planned interventions, and I know planned intervention is much, much more effective than chasing criminals, where, as earlier commentators said, they're often gone by the time you get there. But actually there is a way around that, which is to take it to the community safety partnership. I don't know if you have, I haven't memorised your community safety plan for Uttlesford, but many of them do have drug dealing and drug-related violence in those plans as one of the strategic objectives. And certainly if you are spotting hotspots, that is something that can be fed back through that to the police, and we can plan an intervention that way. So it's not solely by dialing 101 or doing it online. It can also go by the CSP. I don't know if you want to undermine my comments there, or...
No. I would encourage you to report it to us as well, particularly locations, and we'll share any kind of criminal activity information. We'll share it with the police the same way you do, but it might also help us focus our resources and look at how we can also support the police in any way we can. Obviously, we're not going to arrest drug dealers, but we can share that intelligence. We might look at are there any sort of prevention measures we might be able to fund through the community safety partnership to help the police when they can't be there to detect drug dealing going on. Particularly if we're getting lots of feedback about certain hotspot areas, so I would encourage you to also let us know if you can. Thank you.
And basically some hotspots across the county have been dealt with by the Community Safety Partnership, then putting together a bid to the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for safer streets investment, putting in some CCTV, better lighting, whatever it may be, and actually dealing with the problem and getting rid of it. I'd really encourage Uttlesford District Council, please, to take that approach. It can be very effective.
Thank you.
Hello, Roger knows
Hi.
me.
Yep.
My name's Marie Ilding, and I am an advocate against domestic abuse. So there wouldn't be a PFCC meeting taking place to me unless there was a question about domestic abuse. So I had an idea, and I'm always full of them, as you know. First of all, thank you, Roger, for continuing to do these meetings. They're very important because we don't get to see you, but we do get to hear about you a lot. So I do hope that you don't work, but actually I hope you work really freaking hard, and you're definitely worth the wages we pay you. So very good. But I've noted that the Essex Fire Service, who I'm a big fan of, and I support them, and I think that actually they're a good in-between for policing as well. If people don't feel comfortable going to the police, go to the fire service. I always think the guys will always listen. I've been told that you've got a little bit of money to do up some fire stations. And I had just wondered if you guys had thought outside of the box and thought about connecting with Women's Aid and having potentially some of their posters plastered on the side of our wonderful community fire stations. It's just, we do all put in money for protection and for you to protect and serve us, but I don't see much out there when it comes to media or domestic abuse, and it's about time it did have its place. And there's some wonderful billboards in East London from Women's Aid, you know, how healthy is your relationship, whatnot. And it's really simple. Sometimes we don't want to know that there's women out there eating out dog cages, their Christmas dinner, but there is. And sometimes we don't need to know that so vividly. But it would be nice to know questions about, you know, how to spot signs of breakup in relationship, just so even if the kids are passing the fire station on their way home from school, they feel supported. Because there isn't enough. There's enough about breast cancer, teen cancer, Alzheimer's, you know, there's pop-up shops going on here for Lady McCadden. I'd love to do one for domestic abuse, but we can't because we get sent away. So I'm here to stay, as you know. I'm not going anywhere. Sorry, Roger.
Don't apologise.
And I'd like to see Women's Aid posters around towns because I think that we've forgotten how to care a little bit overall.
Thanks very much, Rick. I will pass that Women's Aid suggestion on to Jane Gardner, who is my deputy, who chairs the South Essex and Thurrock Domestic Abuse
And if
Board.
she doesn't listen to you, let me know. She'll have to listen to me.
She'll listen to me and she'd listen to you.
Very good.
But I don't know, there's a thought there about whether the Fire Rescue Service could be involved in doing some promotion. What do you think, Steve?
You've got lovely big shutters, you know, they make perfect places to put posters over.
All our crews are already J9 trained anyway, so they had that training. Violence against women and girls, the CSP work, we are all signed up to that. And it's more than being signed up to it, our crews are aware. And when we go to every instance, the same as our police colleagues, we are always alive to the risk and the threat. And if we've got any doubts, we safeguard and we forward. Thinking back to my previous career as the officer in charge of Braintree Fire Station, we had a Women's Aid venue not far from where I was working. It's no longer there, is it? But it was there for a long while. And we have very, very good relationships, albeit it was, we didn't want to advertise the fact for the obvious reasons of the locations.
It's not too far now. If we don't start showing that we care, people will keep doing it, and we're only going to shove ourselves in the end.
Yeah, I think the moving to our community safety partnerships, in which we are an active member as the Fire and Rescue Service, and by aligning with other organisations, we have a better input. We also have our Safe and Well advocates to go out and do the inspections of the buildings, and that's sometimes we get the first indication. As you say, people will speak to the fire service, and they'll come to us. But also, we're looking at our fire stations as safe havens as well, which is
I'd
ongoing
love
work,
to see
isn't it?
free Wi-Fi in all of your fire stations as well.
So will our firefighters, I'm sure.
Exactly. I've surveyed free fire stations already. They all want it, and so if it's a safe place. I mean, there's a lot of us women that won't have Wi-Fi, but we do have a fire station of some sort in our area. So if we can at least be in that vicinity, it means we're in a safe space because we're not going to be hanging around in the pub car park.
And always, if there's a doubt, there's no doubt, knock on the door.
Yeah, I do.
The difficulty we've got in our fire station, not difficulty, the difference we've got is, apart from Harlow in the northwest, there's not always going to be firefighters on the station because they're on-call firefighters. There quite often is firefighters on the station, or other partner agencies, the police using our facilities, and East England Ambulance Service Trust will be on the station as well, because we don't just use our facilities for firefighters. Great Dunmow is used by the ambulance service and police use it on occasion.
Worth
as well.
looking.
Definitely worth looking into, yeah. I'll talk about it as well. Yeah.
Posters
Yeah.
and signposting phone numbers, because Wickford, for instance, doesn't have anything in it. It's a blank canvas and could be made into something quite beautiful for the community, which would actually help us with some development plans too. So sometimes we have to utilise things in the right way.
Something certainly to explore, isn't it?
100%.
Wickford not desperately local to here, but we'll take that one away as well.
I'll go anywhere for you,
Exactly.
Roger.
Excellent.
We are a little bit over time, but let's keep on going.
We are a little bit over time, but we've got a gentleman here and then a gentleman there and one final question.
Thank you. Another question of hair caution, which brought to mind something which occurred to me recently. Uttlesford has 3 county boundaries. There's a little Suffolk boundary north-east, we've got Cambridgeshire, and then we've got Hertfordshire. And the personal experience is that where I am, which is really close to the Cambridge boundary, and by the way, well done on building public awareness on hair coursing, because I'm increasingly people taking me off. I phoned the police about seeing those hair courses. 2 occasions recently where they've been very close to the county boundary. The response I get is, "Oh no, that's not us. That's Essex." Well, yes, I'm in Essex. Who am I talking to? Cambridgeshire. And or vice versa. They get put through to Cambridgeshire who say, "Well, no, it's not us. You're in Essex," and that's right on the county boundary. And it seems to be, and I don't understand these things, related to what 3 words. That what 3 words is brilliantly for your phone and responding to things. But does it always actually pinpoint quite which police authority area it's actually covering when it's close to about county boundaries? Can I leave that with you?
It's an interesting thought, and I have to admit I've had a similar issue when I'm driving back to Brentwood, where I live, from Epping. You go a little bit into the Met area and out again, but I do know where the boundary is, and came across some horses in the middle of the road, rang it in on 101. Of course, I get a prompt. Sorry, annoying for everyone else, but they always pick up my number when I'm in 101 fairly quickly. And they told me that I wasn't in Essex, I was in the Met area. I put them right. But there we are. Any thoughts on how we actually manage? We've got a pretty good relationship with Cambridgeshire and with Hertfordshire and with Suffolk. I know the PCC of Cambridge has really crossed and pushed all those hair courses across into Cambridgeshire. But any thoughts on how we manage the boundary better?
I think there's 2 people in here who've actually been control room inspectors. So I've been a control room inspector, and so is my boss at some point. So I think a lot of the time when you ring in 999, it does ask you which force you want to go through to. So I think sometimes that tries to. I think also what we're trying to encourage, and I know the local forces are doing this, is to not necessarily just say, sorry, hang up and redial again, but to take the call and then transfer it across. Unfortunately, it does bleed in a little bit of a delay. However, we're finding it better to just take the call and transfer it across for us to then deal with it. Yes, I know what 3 words can, but I'm aware that what 3 words, when it's mapped into, it's now one of the most used systems on systems used up in our control centre. And actually, if you do put it into what 3 words, it does bring up the boundaries. But this may be Essex. I'm saying this, so I can't comment for the other forces. But I know that if it's a 999, it should say we're going to connect you to. And of course, the issue there is the mast you're hitting, isn't it? So if you are hitting a mast in Cambridge or Hertfordshire, then it's going to take you through. And of course, that's going to be the risks of whatever mast you hit and stuff like that. I know we do try and get those other forces just to put the call on and then essentially transfer it across to us. And for us, if it is an emergency, it will be picked up very quickly, and then we'll respond to it, which is what we want to do over just saying to a member of public, actually, stop, move 5 minutes, hit another mask and redial, because that's something we definitely don't want to do. Do you mind if I just respond to the lady at the back about domestic abuse?
Sure.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's probably the most singular thing that I do the most in my district. If I put together the theft, the criminal damage, the hair coursing, it doesn't even scratch the violence that's happening behind closed doors. So for me, it's one of the most singular issues, and probably nearly 50% of my work. I must go to every single domestic abuse and support the people. I get held accountable for my figures, so not just my arrest figures, and there's policies I must follow. I had a very long conversation with the boss sitting to my left about my domestic abuse. For me, I'm trying to work really hard with the Community Safety Partnership, and it's probably the most singular issue that I'm doing the most partnership work with. I'm currently working with Saffron Walden to do the Ask Angela stuff. So if you ask Angela, I'm sure you know what that is. So for me, knowing that I'm pleading to community leaders to tell me about drugs, I plead even harder to the community leaders about domestic abuse. If I'm going to lose members of public in the Uttlesford community, it's through domestic abuse, and I have this year lost people through domestic abuse, or it's on my roads. So for me, I know you brought that up. It is the biggest thing that I must deal with. I must stop it. And we put an extraordinary amount of work, not just me, but partnership and my colleague at the end through the visits. It is one of the most things that we're dealing with. And I can pass to my boss that can also talk about it. So for me, domestic abuse, if there's one thing I could ask my community leaders to take away, it's the domestic abuse thing, to support us, to champion it. It must stop. It's killing people in this country, and it's killing people in this district.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just a few more questions, just because we are a little bit over time now.
So very quickly, I just wanted to pick up with what the Dudden councillor said. When you're coming out into the community, doing like a meeting at the village hall or walking through the village, which I've done with a police person, could you let us know in advance reasonably, rather than us finding out maybe only 24 hours beforehand, so that we can actually advertise it, put it out on our social media that you're going to be around? And also picking up what was just been spoken about, this is where my Essex Association of Local Councils hats. I think we as parish councils could do a bit more. I know the Essex Association of Local Councils become a white ribbon member. Roger, you're not wearing yours, I noticed. But this is again something that we as the community can highlight through our parish councils, because there is something going there. And again, if you could pass through to the association that we can get down to the parish council level as well, that'd be brilliant. Thank you very much.
So second point, all day long, it's something that I have to stop, essentially. So the first thing, so I can't take credit for this. This is Operation Growth. So there's two councillors in the room. The gent with the red coat also talked about it, and then yourself. So about middle of the year, Mr. Jackson and the team started something called Operation Growth. I have essentially a third of all the parishes and wards in the county. So a third of the areas of parishes and wards I own with my community policing team. And for me, it was about how was I getting out and getting to see the community. Because I do have town teams that are working in Dunmow, Saffron, or Braintree, Witham and Housestead. But how am I getting out into the smaller communities? And that was a real challenge for me, because I have such a vast area. I mean, such a vast area, a third of it in Essex. So for me, the team came up with something called Operation Growth, whereby we are going out every weekend. So essentially, we've collapsed one of our community cars from going to do one task to go out and do on weekends something called Operation Growth. So every weekend, and I've got all the statistics here, we go out to essentially 5 or 6 smaller parishes, wards, villages to come and see you. So my understanding, we are reaching out through. Okay, so we are reaching out through the parish clerks and giving a 3-month warning, because I know the gent. Sorry, sir, you said that you'd had a walk around with the thing. That's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to walk around with the community leaders. We want the community leaders to talk directly to my team. I want to try and empower those community leaders to be able to pass that community safety message out, to try and show what we are doing. So for me, I know this is something new that we've started. It was that blend of, do I go to a parish council meeting, or do I go knowing that I have 103 of them, or do I go, I've got a lot.
No, that's fine. No, it's perfectly fine. Come to us, but just let us know, because somehow Clavering slipped through the net and we didn't know.
I'm getting that off Essex police updates that come once a week to me.
Yeah, I will underline dispatch as well. It's a wonderful resource which you can just sign up to on the Essex Police website. It's a wonderful resource, and it's tailored individually to each district, and it tells you all the police visits which are coming up within the foreseeable future, and I mean up to about 3 months.
But if I didn't know about that in the first instance, I didn't know to go onto it, did I? Right. Thank you.
Well, I would just urge everyone, if you want to know what the police in your district are doing, please go to the Essex Police website, sign up to Dispatch for Uttlesford. It is a great resource.
And Paul has a stall at the back with lots of stuff on it, so please raid that before you leave. Sorry.
So Julian, I've just got one person there, then I'll come to you.
Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to ask what's happened to the community special constable scheme, because we had a wonderful one who retired a few years ago. He knew where the drug deal was going on. He knew the vulnerable people in the village. It was an amazing service, but it seems to have died a death. So I just wonder what's happened to it.
So the scheme's still in place. I think it's probably a question about a local volunteer, is it?
I think Mr. Hurst has taken my thunder again. So
Sorry.
Again, it's a local volunteer. So fortunately, the special constabulary, especially for my district, swelled quite considerably during COVID. It then has taken a bit of a sort of a shrink back. I'm one of the only districts that does have the community special constable scheme, and essentially, places like Halstead, Whittam, I have a really strong crew there that do a lot of local work. So for me, it is because the special constable scheme comes with a fee. So yes, the parish stroke towns do pay for it. Let's say our issue is not. It's not that the councils or the parishes want to pay for it. It is getting people to do that role. So for me, it is if we have parishes and wards that are interested, then not a problem. Please have those conversations with us and we'll be quite happy to. It's about the recruitment, because realistically, not only do we want that, we want somebody local to be that community special champion. So for me, it's very similar to the community speed watches. We're really supportive. We would support that constable. We would do double crews with that constable. It's just trying to get a member of the community to sign into it. I think that's our issue. And I know there's a lot of work being done at headquarters level and through the PFCC to try and get back that recruitment. It's just a struggle.
Yeah, we don't get the meetings and the advertising that we used to.
Can I ask which parish you are?
Newport.
Okay. Maybe that's something we can take offline and try and work out how we can find you a volunteer, because I can tell you, as the Inspector Richards was saying, Chief Inspector Richards was saying, where we have them, Whittam's a site to quote.
It's just a brilliant scheme. It just seems so sad.
It really works. So yes, let's see if we can get it up and running again in Newport, which is a fine spot.
Okay, I think we're a bit out of time, so just one last final
Yes,
question.
a very quick one. As in this question, I'm representing the local press. Can we have press releases? Not everybody picks up things on social media. I couldn't find the announcement of this meeting on UDC's website. I found it on yours under the date of 18th December, which is not very much notice. I rang up Darren Horseman a few months ago, which is how I found out about this.
Oh, right. Okay. So we didn't advertise it for the wrong date. I thought you were saying we advertised it for the 18th of December.
No,
you advertised it on the 18th of December for today.
On the 18th of December, you posted
that's
the information about this meeting, which was just before the distractions of Christmas and so on.
So more time.
Could we have more information? Can you issue press releases?
Good point, well made.
Thank you.
I can say, Judith, I know I sent it to yourself, to the editor at Saffron Walden.
I'm not the editor, unfortunately.
Okay.
so
I sent
thank
it
you.
direct to you, but also the Walden local.
We take the hint. Thank you.
I do take your point. If that's everybody, then I think we're about there. So could I just say, do please take your police and crime plan, which we've laid out there, and your fire and rescue plan. We consulted with over 3,500 people in the summer. Do please look at it and take it away. We put a lot of work into it.
Yes, so there for you. And as I said, Paul has his stand at the back with lots of useful information about how to get linked into a regular information flow. But just to say thank you very much indeed all for turning out on what is fairly filthy evening and a fairly filthy time of year. We really appreciate it. These meetings are incredibly valuable. We always learn things that we don't learn through the other established means of communication. So I really do thank you for turning up and giving us your thoughts, opinions and input. Thank you very much indeed. Have a good night.